Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me? Looks like you can hear me. Oh, good. Well, welcome to Dharma Sunday, the last Dharma Sunday of 2025. It's kind of hard to believe. And this sort of strange little bardo period in between the Christmas holiday and the New Year, which maybe is only a bardo if you celebrate Christmas, but if you don't, maybe not quite so much. Um, I'm beaming into you from Idaho, where I tend to spend the holidays with my family. So it's still dark here, and there is no light of the day has not yet begun. However, there is lots of uh, moonlight and starlight out there at the moment. And so, for those of you who may not have attended a Dharma Sunday before with Natural Dharma Fellowship, uh, our format for the morning is that I'm going to begin with some meditation practice, guided meditation. So we'll practice together for, about 45 minutes. And then we're going to take a break, 15-minute break, and we'll come back again by 11. And I will share some thoughts with you. And then we'll have a conversation, I hope. I'll open it up for questions and comments and connection. That's our usual format for an online Dharma Sunday. And I may actually have our meditation end just a little bit earlier than the usual 45 minutes, just so that I can have a little extra time to share with you. But I'll see how it goes. Just letting you know that. So for our practice this morning, you are welcome to turn away from your screen. You don't have to be looking at the screen in order to do the practice. If you prefer not to be staring at the screen, that's totally fine. Just whatever comfortable position you want to place yourself in this morning. You just want to be able to hear me. And so let's just begin by allowing your body to find a comfortable position. And whatever that is for you this morning. And just paying attention to your spine being upright, but also relaxed. It's not a rigid tightness, but just a gentle extension of your body up into the space. And I'd like to start with eyes closed, although we were going to open them after a little while. But just for this first part of the practice, which is a kind of coming back into oneself, grounding, taking stock of how you are in this moment. So closing your eyes, we'll just begin by taking 3 long, deep breaths as a way to drop down out of the thinking mind and into the feeling body. So breathing in a long, deep inhale. And on the exhale, really using that exhale as a way to let any tension or stress, whatever you notice in the body, let things just gentle. And another long, deep inhale. And on the exhale, relaxing, dropping down into the feeling of the body as you're sitting on the cushion or the chair. And again, a long, deep inhale. And again, using that exhale as a way to remind the body to let go and to settle. And just settling into exactly how you are in this moment. To really feel into how is this body and this moment. See if you can feel into the different parts of your body. And not to change anything, but really just to take stock. How is this body right now? And also just asking yourself, how is my heart today? My heart, my mind, my spirit. What is here for me in this moment? Allowing whatever you notice just to be there. Recognizing that whatever you do notice is the working ground for your practice this morning. Nothing to get away from, it's just where you need to be at this moment on this day. Just take some breaths with yourself, breathing into yourself. And now allow your attention to drop down to the base of your body and notice whatever sensations are present where your body meets the cushion or the chair. It might be a sensation of warmth or pressure. Just let your attention rest with whatever sensation you notice at the base of the body. Let whatever sensation you notice help ground you in the present moment. If you can maintain attention on the sensation that you notice, it grounds you in this present moment, anchors you. If you become distracted by thoughts or other sensations, other events, see if you can allow that sensation at the base of the body to draw you back to it, ground you again in the present moment. And notice a stability of your body. The body's natural groundedness, stability, even the weight of the body, all there to remind you that you are experiencing this reality through this embodied form that grounds you to the earth. Gravity constantly reminding us that we're never separate from the earth below. So feeling into that natural stability and groundedness, the weight of the body. Noticing also that this body is breathing. The movement of the body as the breath flows into the body and the breath flows out of the body. And letting yourself become immersed in the feeling of the body breathing. And allowing it to breathe in its own way without altering your breath, just as it is. Relaxing into the natural body breathing. And remembering that every breath, every movement of air into the body and out of the body is another way in which we're constantly sharing in an interconnected matrix with the world around us. The oxygen you're breathing in, created by the planet's green energy, and the air you're breathing out, consumed by that same ecosystem of exchange. Each of us just another movement of interbeing through the breath with the world around us. And again, whenever you become distracted, just allow the feeling of the body breathing to draw you back into oneness with it. Each breath just a reminder of our interwoven nature with reality, a reminder of our place in the living world. See how much you can allow the breath to breathe you. And now allowing your awareness to expand. And first letting yourself just become aware of whatever sounds are taking place in your environment. So still keeping your eyes closed here, really focus on the sense of sound. Just noticing whatever sounds are arising or enduring and dissolving in the field of your awareness. See if you can resist the urge to label or describe or comment on whatever you notice in the field of sound, whatever sounds are arising in the sphere of your awareness. And now allowing your eyes to begin to open and letting in some light and color. But keep the gaze very soft, unfocused, so that you're not staring at anything in particular, but you're just allowing in that sense of the light, awareness of color, maybe even awareness of shape. But again, without the habit of labeling whatever it is that appears in the field of your vision, letting it be present, but without latching onto it or labeling it. And trusting in the stillness of your being to remain present, even in the flow of light and energy that comes in through the eyes. And in particular, now pay attention to the quality of the light wherever you are. There may be different sources of light in your environment, lamps or daylight, maybe candlelight, if you have a candle lit on your altar, See if you can feel into the quality of these different sources of light. The light feels very different depending on the source. So again, just noticing the quality of the light as it is emitted from these different sources in your environment. You might actually notice that the light feels quite different depending on where you rest your attention. You rest your attention with electric light versus daylight versus the light that is coming out of your computer or iPad or phone versus the light that is coming from a candle or a fire. Again, just noticing the different feeling of the light depending on where you rest your attention. And see if you can maintain that sense of the interplay of these different energies of light that are part of your environment. And at the same time, simply relax back into your body and the feeling of the body breathing and your awareness of whatever else is arising and dissolving in the field of your awareness. Just relaxing into an open awareness that includes the whole kaleidoscope of your experience. Nothing to do, just observe, just be present. And slowly wiggling fingers and toes, moving your body a little. And we're going to come back together. So taking your time, maybe stretching your neck. Just coming back to our joint screen together here. I don't have a gong out here in Idaho, so you just have to imagine that the gong just rang. And then we're going to take a break. So you can get some coffee or tea and do whatever you need to do, stretch a bit, and we'll be back I'd like to be back by 10:55. I'm sorry. Yes, 10:55. That's what I meant to say. So I'll see you in just a few moments. So nice to see all your faces. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the continuation of our Dharma Sunday. So I think some of you are aware that I've been offering this series that I've been calling the Forest Teachings as a way to explore different pathways, different practices, different avenues through which we can remember who we really are and rediscover our interconnectedness with the living world and with all of the universe, in which we are one small, spinning, brilliant blue sphere, our planet. And also as a way to remember how we can transform our lives into compassionate and fierce and wise expressions of that interconnectedness. So on this Dharma Sunday, last Dharma Sunday of the year, I want to explore the power of light to remind us of who we really are and to return us to an immersion in loving awareness as a source for feeling resourced in our activity and in our care in the world. Here we are, we just passed the winter solstice and the longest nights of the year, the shortest days of the year. And we're moving into growing the light again, growing the light, that particular light, right? The light of the sun is going to be extending now, day after day after day. And when I was just sort of thinking about all of that, the idea of this notion of what I'm calling living light just feels to me like a rich direction to turn to for remembering our innate nature and our seamless and interwoven connection with the living world. So maybe I should start with, what do I mean by living light? And living light is really just a way of highlighting. God, sorry, terrible pun. I didn't even realize it. Highlighting how engagement with light, all of our engagements with light, are always somehow penetrative and experiential. So think about the different ways for a moment. Just think about the different ways that you experience light. Sunlight at different times of the day, at different times of the year, and in different places. And I'm thinking about, in particular, myself I always notice the quality of the light in the fall when the days are getting shorter. And there's something about the sunlight that becomes, maybe also living in a northern hemisphere, living in the northern part of the United States, for me at least, that that quality of the light in the fall and the autumn time, where it becomes sort of golden and translucent. And there's this sort of gilt edge to everything that highlights, in a way, the feeling of the feeling of everything beginning to settle down into its own silence and into its own stillness, which is, of course, what's happening as we're moving into the wintertime. So just for me, that's one that stands out. But you might also think of, maybe you're an early morning person, and so you really like the light at dawn as the sun is starting to rise, and even right before the sun crests the horizon, the quality of the light that is present at dawn or at dusk. Different people have, different connections, I think, to qualities of light. Or the difference between what it's like if you're sitting in a dark space or you're outside and the only light you have is firelight. Right? Firelight has a very different energetic feeling or sensing than electric light. Candlelight versus firelight, even just a single candle flame versus that kind of chaotic flow of energy that is firelight. Or moonlight, starlight. And maybe you're somebody who's spent time in the jungle or in the ocean, and you've connected with the glow of phosphorescent or bioluminescence that comes from plants and sea creatures deep under the ocean waters. There are these creatures that actually glow and emit their own light deep down in the deepest parts of the ocean. Or even think of a firefly. And when I was down in the jungle in Colombia, the fireflies down there are different from the fireflies up here. They're much bigger, and their lights are kind of a deep orange color. And they'll come and they'll land like near you, and the light that they're emitting will glow, and then it will quiet and become dark. And then if you touch the little bug very gently on its back, it'll glow again, and then it will slowly come back down. It's like we play this little game touching the beautiful little fireflies. There's so many different forms of light that we are immersed in, and all of them have a different frequency, a different energy that sometimes feels really nurturing and healing, and other times can feel very abrasive and difficult. If you have to spend a whole day under fluorescent lights in some kind of, enclosed situation, you can walk out of that just feeling like, it just doesn't feel good, actually. And then the light of the computer, or the iPad or the iPhone, we're constantly in interaction with those kinds of light and the frequency of those lights. And, Zoom fatigue being a real thing. If you spend all day on Zoom and it's not so much even what's happening, it's that you're in this field of energy that is coming from the light of the computer. So anyway, those are just a bunch of different varieties of forms of light that we find ourselves interacting with. And each of those experiences is infinitely variable and gives rise to different psychological and emotional experiences, or even spiritual experiences. Light is incredibly powerful in how it affects us, and really how it affects everything. Right? We couldn't survive without the light of our sun. And then there are also, just to kind of bring our attention to it, there are much more subtle forms of light that, like, for example, the light that you notice when your eyes are closed. So if you've never noticed light when your eyes are closed, see what happens when you close your eyes at night. And is it just pure darkness? Or is there something else in that darkness, a kind of subtle luminosity or a subtle clarity that is also present there? And then there's, of course, the light of our dream world. And sometimes the colors and the light in a dream world can be so vivid and so clear and so vibrant. And just the way that whatever light falls on, especially sunlight, the way sunlight, no matter what it falls on, there's a difference in how we feel that. So the way the light falls on the snow is different from what we experience when light falls on the green leaves of trees in the summer, or on the bare branches of trees in the winter. The way the light can fall, it's very silvery on those bare branches, where there's this richness and fullness and goldenness when it falls on the green leaves in the height of the summer. So just all these different variations of energy that we experience with light. And I'm going to say something specific about it, just 3 different kinds of light, because they're always accessible to us, and they can really affect how we experience ourselves in the world. And then I'm going to move into talking a bit about the notion of living light in the Buddhist tradition and how we can practice with that as a way to return really to who we really are. But first, I just want to say a few things about sunlight, which I don't think are going to be revelatory to anybody. I think probably everybody will know this kind of thing, but that there is something about the light of the sun that is very healing to all beings, but also to human beings. And there are some indigenous traditions that suggest that you can heal a variety of different forms of dis-ease in the body and in the mind and in the heart by gazing into the sun, not with your eyes full open, because that would damage your sight, but with your eyes closed enough that you're still feeling the rays of the light coming into the eyes and then pouring down into the body. And a Native American woman, elder that I know, was talking to me about how this is a practice that they do in their tribe, where if somebody is experiencing some form of illness, that allowing the penetration of the rays of the sun in through the eyes can be one very powerful form of healing. That generally sunlight has these symbolic valences, that it represents vitality and clarity, action, warmth. It's an energizing energy, and it's an awakening energy. It's an activating energy. Gives rise to vitamin D production in our bodies, which is something we really need for bone health and immune health and to regulate mood, which is why so often people who live in the Northern Hemisphere in the wintertime often don't get enough vitamin D, because we just don't have enough opportunity to be in the sun. Also, sunlight can be extremely useful for improving the quality of sleep that we have, that this exposure to the sun regulates our circadian rhythms and the body's natural sleep-wake cycle. So, especially they say that early morning sun exposure can promote not only alertness during the day, but it can improve the quality of our sleep at night. And that usually is described as the very first rays of the sun in the morning, just as the sun begins to crest the horizon wherever you are. If you can go outside and just open your eyes into that light, that it resets your circadian rhythms and your sleep-wake cycle, which is really interesting. That light has that kind of power over our capacity to stay in harmony with ourselves. That daylight, sunlight, anyway. Then there's also the, can you still hear me? My earphones just did something odd. Okay. The notion that sunlight increases serotonin, the production of serotonin in the body, which is another way that we regulate our moods and sense of well-being. And that can help with stress. It can help to alleviate symptoms of seasonal affective disorder, which is a real thing. I think, I think many of you know it's a real thing. That as that we get less and less of that sunlight, it can be hard to continue feeling okay in the world, especially these days when we're facing so much. So those are just some of the things that sunlight in particular, and sunbathing, you could say. Everybody knows, well, maybe not everybody, but I remember being a complete idiot as a young woman, and slathering baby oil on myself and lying out in the sun, because it just felt so good to feel that warmth pouring into all the cells in my body. And it's terrible for my skin, but it just felt so good. It was why people get addicted to tanning, because it activates different kinds of endorphins and hormones in the body. We're just like leaves. We just crave the feeling of that light in our being. So sunlight, okay, one major source of living light that we are always connected to, and that we can use, carefully to remind ourselves of, or even to reinstate ourselves in a kind of harmony with things as they are. And then let's talk about moonlight, a little bit about moonlight. Very different kind of light. Moonlight is reflected light, right? The moon itself doesn't emit any light. It's reflecting the light of the sun. And yet the quality of that light is very, very different from what we experience with sunlight. Often very much associated with yin energy, with feminine energy, with the sun more yang energy and masculine energy. The moon, the energy of the moon, the light of the moon that's influencing the tides, the waters, different subtle energies in the body, women's menstrual cycles. Moon is often connected with our emotions, our feelings, our spirituality in certain ways, in terms of like inner reflection, emotional balance, calm. There's something so interestingly, like if you think, I'm thinking back actually to earlier this month when we had that super moon at the beginning of December. And there were a few nights in my own home, I remember getting up, not sleeping well, getting up in the middle of the night. And it's almost as bright as day with that moonlight falling on the snow. And yet the quality of that light is so different. This sort of stillness to it, and this peacefulness to it, and this calmness to it. And the feeling that you're seeing, but you're not seeing in the same way that we see in the light of under the full light of the sun. So something about moonlight, there've been studies that actually show that moon gazing, if you gaze at the moon at night, that it helps to calm down the mind when it's very tumultuous, or when we find ourselves really worked up with a lot of negative thoughts and emotions. That the moon gazing can be a way of beginning to just remind our system that we can relax into the same kind of silvery, peaceful stillness that the moon is reflecting back to us. And then let's talk a little bit about starlight. So I'm just kind of going with the most kind of, at the moment, with the most natural forms of light that we have access to. Stargazing. I don't know how many people here ever do stargazing, but I have found that this is a really powerful source of renewal, and a really powerful reminder of our interconnectedness. And there actually has been a lot of research recently in fields of ecotherapy and ecopsychology that are describing the benefits of stargazing as this opportunity or this way of being in relationship with feelings of awe, feelings of oneness with the universe, creating a sense of deeper meaning in this life. Many times I really have trouble with sleep. I have a lot of insomnia, and I'll go upstairs in my home at night, and we have a big window that looks out into the trees. And in the winter, in particular, when all the leaves are off the trees, on a starlit night, they're just, there's just this array up there. And over the years, I find it very, very comforting to go up there and just be with the stars while I'm waiting to feel tired enough to go back to bed. That there's something about being in connection with the stars that brings about a feeling of magic, a feeling of awe, a feeling of wonder. And there's one study that shows that stargazers tend to yearn for the same kind of feeling, the same kind of connection and feeling of magic in their day-to-day lives that they experience when they're stargazing. And that there's, all of us in general frustrated that it's difficult to even find an opportunity to gaze at a fully starlit sky because so much light pollution has taken over our world. Even in rural places, there's still this kind of subtle layer of light pollution. But nevertheless, there's still, even in the middle of a city, you can often see the moon, or maybe you can see some of the stronger star constellations like Orion or the North Star. And the astrophysicist and Zen teacher Mark Westmoquet, I think is how you say his name, he coined the whole notion of forest bathing. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about forest bathing. So he's talking about how, well, we don't all have a forest in our backyard to go bathe in, but we do have the night sky. No matter where we are, we have the night sky. And there's just as much nature, so to speak, in the sky. And so he's coined now this new term, star bathing, which is describing how if you're gazing at the stars, there's this kind of whole experience that is a de-stressing experience. And opening our senses to all the kind of vastness of this nocturnal skyscape. So anyway, if you want, if you're feeling the need for some forest bathing, and it's the middle of the winter, do some stargazing instead, star bathing, and see what happens in terms of that feeling of being connected. Maybe a sense of a decrease in loneliness, and also just the feeling of awe and wonder that we need more and more of these days to counteract the sense of despair and depression that can be really prevalent right now with what we're facing in our world. All right, so those are just a few things from a more general context about light. But now I want to talk specifically about living light in the Buddhist tradition. And, light and the notion of light is an enormous topic in Buddhism. It's everywhere and in so many spiritual traditions, right? The notion of light is one of the primary metaphors that is used to help us return to our own wakefulness and our own deepest sense of well-being. And in Buddhism in particular, the notion of light, living light, is referring to this core Buddhist idea that enlightenment, right, even in the word, right, enlightenment is this recognition of this inherent, radiant awareness within all beings, right? It's an inner radiance, an inner light, an inner energetic, it's a awareness with energy, awareness with that radiates like light. And that light is what dispels our misunderstandings and our confusion about ourselves and about reality. So Buddhist practices, in a way, all Buddhist practices are functioning to reveal this and help us to recognize this inner radiance within. And there are many, many Buddhist symbols that are reminding us of the centrality of the experience of light along the path, how all of our experiences of light can help return us to who we really are. There's even a Buddha in the Buddhist sort of pantheon named Amitabha. Some of you have probably heard of Amitabha. Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light. And maybe some of you also are familiar with the Buddha's dying wish when he spoke to, I think it was Ananda, told Ananda that he wishes each person to be a lamp unto yourselves and for all others. So that even the teachings, the Dharma, is referred to as the light that pierces through and drives away the darkness of ignorance, which really means the light that illuminates our confusion and shows us the way things actually are, removes us from beneath the veils of our projections and our ideas and our thoughts about what reality is and who we are, so that we can actually see the truth of things as they really are. We need that light of that awareness to really see the truth. And if you are somebody who's gone on pilgrimage or you visit Buddhist temples or organizations, right, the symbolism of the light of awareness is everywhere. And when you look at sacred paintings of the Buddha or of different deities in the Tibetan Buddhist or Vajrayana world, they're always surrounded by light. I think the Buddha often is shown with a halo of light around his head, and his skin was said to be very clear and luminous and bright and shining with light. And even the word enlightenment, actually, what it originally meant was to make something clear or to see through. So there's this whole symbolic ocean of insight into how light is perhaps one of the most powerful gateways back into recognizing our interconnectedness with the living world and our own innate wakefulness. And there's a story in the Theravada tradition of a monk who decided to practice on the perception of light. So his whole practice was focusing on the different qualities and energies of light until he started to see, the way the story goes is that he starts to see light as this constant experience of a luminous sort of presence everywhere. And some people have this kind of very acute sensitivity. They can actually see auras or halos or energy fields around things or other people. They can actually perceive the light around other beings. But in the story of this monk, he starts to, for him, both day and night become the same, because the sense of luminosity that he's experiencing, which is the inner light of his own wakefulness, becomes so strong that seemingly external light no longer has an effect on his basic experience. So this inner luminosity of our being, this part of us that is already enlightened, our Buddha nature, our innate nature, is described, always described with these metaphors of light and luminosity and clarity and clear seeing. So that as we cultivate our awareness, not awareness of anything in particular, but the fundamental awareness that lies at the base of our being, the part of us that is always tuned in, that is always awake, that is always aware of our experience. We're beginning to enhance this luminosity of our fundamental wakefulness of who we really are. Zen Buddhism has some really beautiful descriptions of this inner luminosity of our basic being, this living light within us, that Zen master Hongshu describes. He describes this wakeful Buddha nature within us. He calls it a bright and boundless field. That when you tap into, when you recognize that awareness, that dimension of your being, it's like stepping onto a bright and boundless field. And another way he describes it, he says, the deep source, transparent down to the bottom, can radiantly shine and can respond unencumbered to each speck of dust without becoming its partner. So again, that sense that there's some deep source within us that is completely clear, luminous, and shining. There's an energetic dynamism to our fundamental being that is always radiating out. Actually, we know this, right? We feel this when we're in the presence of others, that there's always some kind of radiation that is coming to us from other people. But if you're with somebody who is, who has really cleared away a lot of these veils of projection and self-focus and confusion, that luminous energy that you feel is stronger. So I recently just did a retreat with Anam Thupten Rinpoche, who I think a lot of you know, and he is really a being who has a lot of those veils have been removed. And it actually doesn't matter what he says. It really doesn't matter. It's just being in his energy is such a delightful, healing, gentle, awakening experience. I mean, I really recommend doing a retreat with him or just going to one of his Dharma talks online. He does a lot of online Dharma talks. Anam Thupten, which Amanda will put in the chat. But they're just like, you feel the man's energy in a way that is so transformative and beautiful. So somebody like that, and there are lots of people on the planet like that, more than you would think. Okay, so then let's talk about light in Tibetan Buddhism, because I do want to have some time to have a conversation together. Because, of course, this is a Tibetan Buddhist venue, presumably. Although I really like to think of us as more of a drawing on the Dharma of the living world tradition, which includes Tibetan Buddhism, of course. So in the Tibetan tradition, which you really could say is like the yogic traditions of Dzogchen and Mahamudra, this notion of light, of living light, is talking about the deepest level of our existence, right? The nature of who we are. which is described as a kind of luminous awareness, empty and luminous. It's clear like light. It's also cognizant, it's knowing. So it's not this inert light that has no function, right? It is aware and it is dynamic, right? It's alive. So it's fertile, it's productive. And we know that because we are productive, we are alive, we are changing all the time, we are manifesting differently, moment to moment to moment. We don't stay the same. So it's this and that changing dynamism of our being is the radiating energy of our awareness unfolding itself. And this very subtle level of our being, this luminous wakefulness, this awareness at the base of our being, it's the source then also of everything we experience. Everything is arising in our experience as a spontaneous display of energy, light, texture, color, impression. And in Tibetan Buddhism, or Dzogchen in particular, and Mahamudra, the two traditions, yogic traditions of Dzogchen and Mahamudra, and for those of you who aren't familiar with those terms, they're referring to two traditions within the Tibetan Buddhist world, also a little bit Indian Buddhism as well, that turn to the notion of light and the living light as a way to bring us back home to who we really are. That the light is a portal. The light is a way in to who we really are, and it's also the full manifestation of our wakeful being in the world. So if you're a practitioner in the tantric tradition or the Vajrayana tradition, you may perform visualization practice where you visualize a Buddha or a tantric deity of some kind in the space in front of you as a body of light. And from that body of light, you receive light. It flows towards you, it flows into you, it permeates you, it reminds you again and again that this Buddha that you're visualizing is actually who you really are. And the whole process of that remembering is taking place through an exchange of energy and light. So tantric deities are always visualized as a body of light. You never want to visualize them as solid and fixed. They are always a body of light, like a rainbow in the sky. Which actually then brings me to the topic of rainbows and the light of, a lot of times Buddhas are depicted in a field of rainbow light. So all the colors of the spectrum of light included in these 5 colors of blue, yellow, red, white, green. And this is because from the perspective of these traditions, who we really are is this manifestation of these 5 essential lights. So some of the most secret teachings in the Dzogchen tradition talk about how beings in their essence, right, on the subtlest level of who we are this radiation of these 5 colored lights. They're the essence of who we are. They are seen either in a confused way or in a wisdom way, in an awakened way. And depending which way we see them, gives rise to the rest of our experience. A being who has recognized that essence at death may actually dissolve back into those 5 lights. And that dissolution back into those 5 colored lights is called achieving the rainbow body. Very rare. This does not happen very often. Like, very rare, but it does still happen. So again, there's just this invitation that we find over and over again in this tradition to discover how light is not only a metaphor for who we really are, but is actually a way of practicing with returning to who we really are. And one avenue for doing that in the tantric tradition is to work with these 5 lights, right, that I just described, which are also called the 5 Buddha wisdoms. And they're connected with our emotional experience. So all of our emotions are manifestations of one or another of these 5 lights, these 5 fundamental lights. And if we could really connect to the essence of our emotions, we could begin to see them as forms of wisdom. They're no longer contained within our storylines and our ideas about our emotions, but they open us into what those emotions are when they are released from our fixations and our grasping, revealing us to ourselves as who we really are. So the emotions as a gateway of energy and light to return to who we really are. So if that seems in any way intriguing, I'm going to be teaching a retreat on that in March with Matt Bellows. We're going to be working with the 5 Buddha family energies, the 5 lights, and the 5, which are also connected with the 5 elements, because the elements are also these energies of light. So those are some of the ways that light is a constant reminder and it's maybe even a stimulator, a mode of recognition that we can harness every day to come back to a place of balance and ease and connection with ourselves, and then to go deeper, as a practitioner, to go deeper into beginning to recognize and settle into a more subtle recognition of who we really are than just the kind of usual gross sense of self that we are contained within. That we're really not these solid entities that we emotionally tend to want ourselves to be. Actually, we're very fluid. We're very radiant. We're very translucent. We're very we're beings of energy and light, and beginning to feel into that part of that way of being can be very healing and nurturing, and can be a real source of response to the heaviness, the darkness, the sense of hopelessness, depression, despair. So much of what's happening in our world feels like a kind of attempt to pull us down into this solidity of where it feels like nothing is workable. And it feels like the path that we're on is one that we're not going to be able to deviate from. But if we begin to access this malleable, fluid, radiant part of ourselves, there's a lot more possibility there for transformation, for change, for awakening, for kindness, for love. Because really what it comes down to, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before opening it up, is that, when we start to feel into our inner radiance, our inner luminosity, Um, we're becoming more and more intimate with ourselves, but also with our interconnectedness with the living world all around us. And it's from that intimacy that compassion arises very naturally. So, right, we don't have to add compassion onto our lives. Compassion is actually, it is the radiance, it is the living light of our basic being. It is the natural energy of clarity and responsiveness that arises when our sense of separation begins to dissolve. Right? This natural quality of responsiveness to what needs our attention is, is a way that our inner radiance emerges naturally into the world. So the more we become familiar with and recognize our own inner light, it's really the light recognizing itself, then there's not a pulling back from the world, but there's a ease of engagement, of responding to the world that comes very naturally. Care arises very naturally. It's not an obligation, it's not an ideology, but it comes out of that intimacy. So, from that perspective, our care for the natural world and our recognition of our place, our embeddedness, our inseparability from the natural world are the same thing. There's no difference between caring for and recognizing that we're already intimately intertwined with the living world that is, our home in this life. So I want to stop there so that we can have a little time to check in together, I hope. And so if you have thoughts or comments or questions, please feel free to raise your virtual hand, I guess, is how we've been doing it. And then Amanda will call on you to unmute yourself. But I would be really delighted to hear from anybody who wanted to share something.
So Lama Liz, while we're waiting for other folks to raise their hands, I would love to take the moment. Um, I was really inspired by the phrase you used, ecotherapy. I've never heard that term before, and when you said that, my mind just exploded with all of these ideas, and I'm so excited because I get to go do a ton of research and learn about this. So thank you so much for sharing that term and that idea.
You're welcome. I know. I really love that idea too. I found that fairly recently myself, and I was like, "Ooh, yeah." There's something about that that suggests that there is this possibility that, I mean, again, we've been talking about this a lot, but we could actually heal and be healed by our interconnectedness with the natural, with the living world.
And it creates this really interesting connection. We talk about climate change and climate destruction and habitat destruction. And right now, the world is moving in this great direction of really valuing mental health. It almost feels like another avenue of um, indicating the value of nature.
I mean, truly, it feels like, to me at least, that our hope lies in transforming consciousness to return really to a way of being and relating that was at one time fundamental to our existence as a human race, but that we've forgotten and moved away from. And so much illness or dis-ease has come from that separation. So, yeah, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. And Anne.
Uh, I think actually Suze was ahead of me, but that's okay. So it's right. So
We'll go have Sue's second.
yeah, good. I was down below her. So I'm sort of intrigued with the it's very much about the five elements, but when we meditate, it's very much about grounding and getting into our body and being solid. And yet there's also this, what you've been talking about today, the light, which is much more open and dissolving. And I guess I'm just reflecting that each of the elements has an incredible gift and use. And this does not eliminate the importance of grounding and sort of being solid and, feeling ourselves part of the earth. But I love the idea that we can kind of dissolve into the light because we can get so, closed down. And this idea of the opening into the light, however it comes, and such a truth how much we're animals and how we react to the light and how we should all be hibernating in the winter.
Or we should all be stargazing and moongazing in the winter.
One way or the other. But yeah, it's very, very beautiful thinking what a powerful access this is into our own luminosity. So a lot to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And I would say, too, that working with the elements, which you brought up, yes, the notion of the earth element is a grounding element, but to be aware for all of us that the elements are part of our experience on multiple levels, right? There's a kind of outer, more seemingly solid dimension to the earth element, but there's also a very subtle and energetic quality to the earth element that is not solid. That has more to do with the way our system stays balanced and grounded, but not heavy, not solid. It's the energy of the earth element that we can work with in our experience, as much as we work with the actual, more solid sense of earth as an outer quote element. I'll just put that out there. Oh, now Suze. Suze, you're muted still.
Got it.
There we go.
Thank you. Last week I was listening to Eden Toll talk about darkness, and it's been really percolating for me ever since. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, even though in Buddhism, darkness is associated with ignorance, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how darkness can be a portal, can be a teacher, without the light of like the moon or the stars, but just darkness itself.
Oh, yeah. That's a beautiful question, and one I love too, because, darkness it's not the absence of light, actually. It's a different way of being in relationship to light. So it's the way I think of darkness is that it's like you enter into the womb of your own inner being. And yes, I mean, there are more some surface metaphorical connections with darkness and ignorance, for sure. And at the same time, if you think about in the Tibetan tradition, there are retreats called dark retreats, where you go into complete darkness for a week or 10 days or months at a time. And people who do these kinds of long, dark retreats discover that actually the darkness is full of light, that it's, you're in the light of your own awareness. as opposed to in an external, seemingly external illumination, but that the illumination is the radiance, that radiance I was talking about, that dynamism of your own awareness. And it's tremendously powerful to connect and to become more familiar with the way awareness is always expressing and displaying this energy of responsiveness as light, or not just as light, but there's a way in which light is very much a part of that. So I'll just say that for now because it's a big topic, but thank you for bringing that up.
Next up, we have Judith.
Good morning. Thank you
Good
so
morning, Judith.
much. I was really struck by the whole talk, but one of the things that jumped out for me was the healing nature of stargazing and how it can heal loneliness. And one of the things I've been noticing is it seems like the more I enter into awareness of my own process, the more I realize how separate I feel. And then the more judgmental I feel about my sense of separateness because I've been around for a while and that should be limiting. And so, limited. So what I'm thinking is, I hate to be so cold, but I'm going to bundle up and start stargazing from my deck, and I do an experiment with that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I really encourage that. And you know what? You don't have to go outside either. You could just make sure you turn off all the light that you can inside and have a clear window that looks out into the night sky on a starlit night. So you don't have to go outside and be cold, although that's a beautiful, sort of more encompassing experience of stargazing in the winter anyway. Thank you, Judith. Anwal, hello.
And Wallander.
Oh, you're unmuted, but I don't hear you. I don't know why. Hmm. Well, maybe if you take the headphones off, I don't know whether that would help, and you just go through the computer audio. And we can also just give you a few minutes to try to figure that out. Sometimes if you sign out and sign back in again, it can fix it. And meanwhile, we'll go to Lisa. But we'll come back to you, Kamal, because I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi, Lisa.
thank you. This is my first Dharma Sunday. I recently joined the Natural Dharma Fellowship, and I did one of the silent retreats at Wonderwell recently. It was amazing. And there was so much about this talk today that was really powerful. But one of my dear friends, who I believe is also on here today, recommended to me just yesterday a book called The History of God, which looks at the major Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And it's just so interesting to me that whether it's a Native American tradition, whether it's any sort of spiritual practice devoid of religion, or you look at like sort of the three major monotheistic religions, that light in all of them is such a huge, huge presence, really. And it's one of the things where you say, there's that's one of just, I guess, the many sort of threads that run through all of these sort of spiritual practices. And I was thinking about that last night, and I just found it fascinating that this was the topic today, because I didn't know that when I signed up, actually. So it was, there are no coincidences kind of thing, but it's just so powerful that there doesn't seem to be any major tradition or religion or spiritual practice that doesn't acknowledge the power of light.
It's very true. And I mean, in some ways it seems so obvious, right? I mean, and we don't acknowledge it enough. We don't pay enough attention, I think, to the power of light in our experience on every day, not just in a spiritual context per se, although ideally our lives are sacred. Every moment of our lives is sacred. And so remembering that, connecting with that, and light can be such a powerful tool to remind us of that sacred nature of our lives in every moment. So thank you, Lisa, and welcome. Welcome to Natural Dharma Fellowship.
Thank you so much.
So good to have you here.
Thrilled to be here.
Anwal, how's it going?
Let me try now. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you.
So I'm hearing through my speaker and speaking through my computer. So thank you, Lama Liz. As I messaged you, I've been listening to your first teachings, and this is my first live one. So really connecting with what you're talking about. I will pick up on what Sue said about Deborah Eden Tull's talk, and I took it in addition to experiencing darkness and light externally, also examining sort of light thoughts or light-filled thoughts inside me, as well as the dark thoughts. And I was kind of, as Suze was talking, I was reminded you somewhere in your talks you talked about anger, which I assume is a dark thought, leading to clarity, and you connected it to water and the clarity of water. And it sort of clicked for me that we have to do both. We have to examine our dark thoughts and kind of lead to understanding and clarity of what that dark thought tells us about ourselves. So if you could say some more about that, I'm trying to integrate all this.
Yeah, thank you, Kanwal. That's a great question. And so just to maybe give it a little context, there are teachings that describe how some of the primary difficult emotions we experience, which are lumped into 5 main categories. So anger or hatred is one, grasping or unhealthy fixation or desire, pride, jealousy, and then fundamental just bewilderment or ignorance. And each of those, of course, contains, we experience such a range of emotional experiences, and they're often mixed, right? It's not just a pure feeling of anger or pure feeling, but sometimes it is. And so the way that the tradition describes this is that each of these seemingly dark thoughts, shall we say, are forms of energy that we have solidified because we grasp onto them, we fixate on them, and we tell ourselves a lot of stories about why we have them and where they came from. So those energies don't have an opportunity to release and open themselves up so that we can actually see what they really are. With anger, the way the teaching goes is that if you could let go of the fixation on the anger and the stories about it, that you begin to see that the energy of anger is a very clear, very precise, very sharp energy that can see the truth of things very clearly. When it's not expressed as aggression or causing harm in some way, it is just a deep clarity, like that is often is called mirror-like wisdom. So this is going back to that, what I was talking about, the rainbow lights. This light of mirror-like wisdom is the light you would call the blue light or the white light. Sometimes it depends on the particular tradition. And you can discover and work with that energy by working with light, working with the elements, and working with the emotions. And that's what this retreat in March will be focusing on, is working with these emotions like anger, to really begin to allow ourselves to let that emotion release itself and show us what its actual nature is, this mirror-like wisdom. So thank you for bringing that up again, Conwell, and it's really great to see you.
Same here. Thank you. I'll sign up right away.
And Jem, hi, Jem. This will be our last question or comment for today, and then we'll dedicate the merit.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yeah.
Good. There were two things, and they're sort of, you got my mind going on these two tracks. So I'll cover. One of them is sort of, as it were, technical, because this thing of the 5 colors, which I've not specifically heard before, but it made me wonder if in some way they're connected to or expressions of the Dhyani Buddhas.
Oh, yeah, same thing.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's great. Great. I just had a feeling that might be it. And the other thing was just that in the wonderful Dzogchen course that we recently finished, there was this fundamental balance that was spoken of emptiness and luminosity, and there's the luminosity again, the light, and of course that kept coming to my mind as you were giving your talk, and it seems to me that there's an almost limitless possibility of exploring more deeply into those two factors.
That's for sure. It's a whole path. Yeah.
Wonderful.
No, it's very true. And just for those of you who may not be familiar with this, what Jem is referring to is that in the Dzogchen tradition, this nature of who we really are is described as this non-dual unity of emptiness and luminosity. And today I was really focusing on the luminous dimension of it, but we could also focus on the emptiness or spacious dimension of awareness as well. But they're not separate. They are 100% non-dual, a unified situation that is the essence of who we are, that we are these beings of spacious, open, luminous awareness. That's our fundamental nature. So I'll maybe just leave it at that. But wonderful. Thank you so much, Jem.
Thank you. Thank you, Lama Liz.
And thank you, everybody, now for coming today. And I hope you have a beautiful and powerful and hopefully peaceful and energizing New Year. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in 2026. So let's dedicate the merit together. And Jem, maybe you should mute because otherwise there might be some interference there.
Thank you.
And we'll do my favorite dedication now, which is first just to take a couple of minutes, maybe even just a minute, to really formulate a dedication from your heart that any benefit that you have experienced today will flow out into the world to make a difference in whatever way that it can. And then we'll recite our group bodhicitta dedication prayer, which is a prayer for compassion and love to flow into the world and for our hearts to be illuminated and lit up by the light of love that is present everywhere. So just take a moment and send out some blessings from your heart into the world today, some light from your being. And may it illuminate the darkness of suffering and struggle that so many beings are experiencing at this time. And then we'll do the bodhicitta dedication prayer. Changchup Semcho Rinpoche Mache Panam Chejurji Chepa Nyampa Mepayam Gongne Gongdu Show. May the pure, brilliant sun of bodhicitta dawn in each and every heart and mind, dispelling the darkness of suffering and confusion unstoppably until all are fully illumined and awakened.